Hey, how you going? I'm Louis. So I'm here to talk about a specific event jam thing that I made, but then kind of not talking too much about that. I'm really talking about boring games and how to avoid them, like the plague, although they've caused a lot less death. So as a bit of a taster, I'm talking about myself, talking about the current series of commissioned video games we have at the bar, and kind of about like how they work in this public space and how they couldn't work outside of a public space. And there's some stuff about delete and similar kind of stuff with that. And then I'm going to kind of end with like a bit of a, go make your own different game spaces. You don't have to. I'm well aware that, people don't, you're not going to like necessarily make a game. I mean, wait. Yeah, you don't have to make a space, it's fine. But I think the more people who sort of know about these kind of spaces and understand what goes into them and better what comes out of them, the better. This is just sort of telling you what I do for a living. It's good to know, even if you don't want to make a space, but you should, because it's great, kind of. So hi, so I run a space in Melbourne called Bar SK. I previously ran SK Games in Perth, and we used to make games for public spaces. We used to go put these games at different events and parties and stuff. No one ever paid us really well for it. All the money went over the bar, so eventually I sort of went, hey, maybe I should be taking the money from the bar, and then the bartender said, no, you shouldn't, get back. So I made my own bar, and yeah, in my sort of day-to-day, I hate the phrase wear a lot of hats, but I do a lot of different stuff. And then I guess the one thing that I do a lot that I really enjoy doing is making a space for people. I personally want to show people weird video games and do different stuff, but it's mostly about making sure that the space is comfortable for people. It's very human and very experience oriented. So that's kind of where I'm going to go with this. Anyway, strap in. So my bar, we show games. I call it a gallery space because it's a rotating selection. When it started, it was a very quickly rotating selection. Now we've sort of gone back to sort of month by month basis, and wow, having some free time is really good. One of the things I do is custom hardware, and luckily I have something I can show, which is just a really simple controller. This is actually a $5 bamboo, this thing from Kmart. These boxes are great. They're cutlery drawers. If you ever need a box in a hurry, A+. But yeah, so I try to make it very accessible. The worst thing about video games is inaccessibility, and I find they're not necessarily about physical accessibility, it's about people who don't know about video games and don't want to handle an Xbox controller or use a keyboard and mouse when they're not at work. The way that we sort of showcase games is meant to be very human and tangible. We also have a lot of good beer, and that helps. The middle image is one of our recent collaboration brews, which was apparently Burnley's best-selling beer this year. Bit of a brag, but yeah. In terms of creating spaces like this, if you don't have if you just try to attach a bar to it or a cafe or something, you don't have any kind of passion with that, it's very, very difficult. Luckily, I do have a passion for that, so cool. It's also in a very public space. It's on Smith Street in Collingwood, which is a hugely weird street, and we get a lot of different people through. I think the amount of games people we get through is probably about maybe a third. We make our living off mostly beer crew, but just randoms, and that's the people that I want to talk to. I don't need to preach to converted, basically. Although the games crew are lovely and Melbourne serves us well, better than Perth would have, but that's a different thing. So the series that we've got at the moment is a commissioned series. Each month we commissioned a local developer to create a game for the space. And these are all local independent Victorian developers, except for next month, but don't worry about it. And they're also people that we worked with before. They kind of know how to make a game for the space, and I trust them, which has been really, really useful this year. And the way we've funded it is through the local breweries, independent breweries as well. They don't have a lot of money, so the thing they can give us is cheaper beer. We can sell that, we can use that money to pay for developers. It's a little ecosystem that sort of fits in because there isn't a lot of funding for very small scale games. And I believe they're important. That's kind of why I'm standing up here. But we found a way around, basically, which is being through the wonderful world of beer. Oh yeah, and I put semi-sustainable because ideally there'd be something else. Like we wouldn't give all our extra beer money to developers, but they love it, so whatever. So the games that they've created for us are really interesting, but not if you're not at the bar. It's it's a very specific type of game, and I think they're really important, and I think they do really well. So some of the kind of design, a lot of the stuff is going to be like design prompts. So hopefully that's cool. If it's not, it's all right. Like the one thing that we aim for is simplicity. We give people a certain amount of money to make the game, and we only want that much worth of game, sort of thing. We really want it to be simple because the simpler it is, the more people can interact with it, the more people can understand it, comprehend it, and get it. And that's really what we like to see from games in a space, is people just getting it, basically. Games are kind of like a communication between a developer and a player. And if the game is obscure and obtuse, then the player can walk away feeling like they've just been staring at a wall. As soon as they kind of get that feeling of understanding it, comprehending it, that's where people really have a great experience, and they kind of, I think both developer and player both really benefit from that. And that can be a lot harder in a longer or more traditional game sense. Then there's also stuff like, no menus, choices, no one cares about that. We have big projectors, we want it to be colorful and interesting. There's a lot of different sort of previous games we've shown that have been more personal, more moody, more text-based, and I know there's a lot of writers out here, but no one reads in a public space. Putting words up there is just like, yeah, might as well throw them in the bin. But yeah, so there's definitely like different things that work really well for public spaces that just don't work anywhere else. And the reason I found out about this kind of thing, or the reason I kind of honed this skill of figuring out how to just talk to developers and sort of create these games, has been because of Delete. Delete's a game jam that we sort of started running years ago. Whenever that first, so this is like the first poster. And it's basically a jam that starts off in the morning, developers rock up, they're all usually preset teams, and they come in, make games during the day from about sort of 11 till 7. People have coffee, beer, whatever, doesn't matter. It's open to the public, people come in, see the developers, see how it works, and then at sort of 7, 8 o'clock, all the games go up, and then at midnight they all get deleted. They only exist for that very short window. And it started off as this kind of like celebration of very transient games and very sort of, just a very different kind of way of playing a game, especially in this sort of age of digital technology and archiving and all this useless shit. The amount of stuff on my hard drive that I don't need is most of it, basically. It's just, and I think everyone's a bit guilty of that. Like, the idea of something digital not taking up space is false, first off. But also, it's something I think we've all kind of internalized. Backups and all that kind of stuff. Like, if this one goes in the drink tomorrow, fuck it, that's fine. I'll lose all the stuff on there, and I'll just start again. It's all right. We can all rest easy. But please don't destroy my computer. So the biggest thing about delete is it's not a spring clean. It's not getting rid of stuff. It's creating things that are only going to exist for a certain amount of time. It's creating things to be destroyed, things that you can celebrate knowing that this is the last time you're going to celebrate it. It's sort of like a birthday. It only happens once a year. People who have birthday weeks and birthday months, fuck off, don't care. So when we started doing this thing, like, it had a really strong resonance with the people who had an interaction with these games. They felt very, like, it felt very different than playing a regular video game. And it felt very human. And part of that was the jam part of it, and having those artists hang around to see people play their games. Oh yeah, I've got heaps of time. So the big component was this very human space, and especially in the street we are, where random people come through all the time, being able to grab them, show them a developer, show them a game, tell them that their interactions with the game have a very real consequence, and this is the last time it'll be interacted with. It was very, it's a bit melodramatic, it's fine, but it was very impactful. So the image is the e-cheese zone. E-cheese zone used the time constraint really well. It had a loading screen. I think, what's it there? 25 minutes. It started off at an hour. And every time, the game is very simple, very simple, but there are certain rules, and if you mess up, then the game kicks you back to the loading screen, which takes another hour. So that's, the consequences are huge. And watching someone play such a simple minigame with such a huge, like, potential impact was really, like, yeah, really something. And the issue zone was recreated after delete, because delete is all about obviously destroying the game itself, but the concept and the ideas behind it are, you know, like, you can't destroy them. Like, it's at a bar, so there's like a certain level of alcohol involved, so there is possibilities, but theoretically, it's fine. So time is, like, that's just generally the factor most people work with. But there's also things like degradation. One of the original prototype of this whole event was a controller I made out of clay at an event in Scotland in 2015. Sure, why not? You don't know. I could say anything. And that controller was a skull you brush its teeth. Don't worry. But as people played it, it degraded physically. The clay fell away, the teeth fell in. It got harder and harder to play during the night. At the end of the night, it was thrown in the bin, and I deleted the game. And people had a very interesting reaction to the fact that the only way they could play was to remove parts of the game. And it was a very it was a takeaway of that. In the same sense, for the first delete, there was a sort of desert golfing-esque game, but instead of an infinite desert, it was only 9 holes. So every time you played a hole and you sunk the ball, you knew that you were sort of knocking off that chunk of its life. And each hole had a huge impact to where the developer played the last hole, sunk it, the game deleted itself completely, and everyone applauded. It was very different than playing desert golfing on your phone while you're having a crap. But there's also things that I found really useful in terms of the games we show at the moment, which is like players adding and subtracting, whether it's games like, wait, I'm gonna go back, because, yeah, the top game here is Jonathan Rubok's, whatever he called it. I should know, it was up at the bar for a month. But he went through a bunch of different names, so that's why it slips my mind. Sorry, Jono. All the little like names circling around the sun in the middle, they're all the high scores of the players who've played it. So during its time at the bar, it amassed more and more like stars as different people played it, and people could find their own star. The further out it was from the sun, the higher the score. And it was a really interesting way to have players accumulate, or the game sort of, accept these inputs from players and accumulate it during its time, like its lifespan. And then you get things, like the things like limited resources, which kind of each zone does a bit. the fact that there's only one instance of this game, that there's only one person playing it, or maybe if it's multiplayer, but like the fact that people can be assured that at a certain time, they're the only one interacting with it. It's not out there in the world. It is right in front of them, and it's a conversation between them, the game, and no one else. Like, again, it brings it back to a physical space, people, and interactions. And it's not something you can replicate through an online jam or any other kind of, I don't know, any kind of experience, really. Oh yeah, that's right. I put the images in really late last night, so that does that apparently. Oh yeah, that's right. I couldn't find an image for this one. So arbitrary spaces, like, so people have mentioned to me, like, you know, delete is very arbitrary. You don't need to delete these things, which is true. Like, it's, yeah, 100%. The original game, like the original toothbrushing simulator, was not so arbitrary because it was only at the end of the event that I was like, well, the controller's fucked up, so I might as well just delete the game because there's no point having a game without a clay skull to brush its teeth. So that was sort of less, well, I think the whole thing's arbitrary, really. But creating delete is about arbitrarily limiting this space. And that's just in one particular avenue. So it's not going to be the next game over. That's just, I don't know where I wrote that. Anyway, so you can arbitrarily limit games in a lot of different ways. And these are just kind of like prompts to sort of get some cogs in the back of your head turning. There's, yeah, different ways you can put a game in a space, but I suppose the end result of all this is the life of the game. It's not about how you design the game or how long it takes. It's about where it ends up. A lot of game jams have this kind of freedom, but the end result of this game is it ends up online. Maybe you get some coverage, maybe you work on it later with some friends, but there's no actual, like, it's not a consideration besides maybe I might make some money out of it, which is rooted, but whatever. It's really like the way of thinking about it that I kind of try to get people thinking is just where's the end result? Who's playing it? What's the physical space in which they're playing it? How are they playing it? Are their friends around? Is it for a long time? Are they shit-faced? Whatever. Being able to sort of consider your game as an interaction and sort of work backwards from there is the way I've been thinking about things, and it's been really successful, I guess, in, well, I don't know what success is, but actually that's the next slide, isn't it? Kind of. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things about like the video game landscape at the moment and what is successful and your own metrics of success. And I find that they're not, like the commissioning stuff is really interesting because, as I say, I give someone X amount of money to make a video game and I want that much worth of game, please. When I sort of, like the commission series for this year, basically they go up for free on itch, or pay what you want, and the developer can get what they want out of that, or whatever people give them, I guess. But when I talk to them, it's like, imagine you're never going to get any more money from this. Like, this is why I'm paying for the game, basically. I'm giving you all the money that you're going to get from this game now to make this game. And, you know, so your metrics of success are not how much coverage you get or, like, you know, how many people download it or look at it on Twitter, and, like, your metrics of success is basically, do you make a game or not? Because if you don't, I take the money back and, you know, then some. But I don't actually, that's fine. So it's really like trying to alter the idea, and like it's looking at different avenues like regular sort of art grants and proposals and things like that. Like it's really trying to like look at different mediums, take what we can from those, and just try to create different games with different goals. Because I find that the homogeny of video games at the moment is detrimental to the kind of experimentation and the kind of interactions. And I think it's kind of why there's the big sort of pushback from, say, you know, the older generation and the government, and that kind of, you know, the games are for kids, or like that kind of sort of idea, is because there's no middle ground. It's really like a game that gets pushed out there to make a lot of money and make their developer successful, or that doesn't exist. And the games that we've been making have been popular with people who, well, everyone really. The amount of different people who come through the bar, as long as they're over 18, then they like it in different ways, and it's really inspiring to see. It makes me stay in the industry a lot longer than I would have otherwise, because you make a lot more money through beer, put it that way. So I suppose out of all these points, which I can't be bothered reading right now, the last one is really interesting to me, which is that when I chose to make the space, I obviously chose an alcohol-centered venue, mostly because it was a business model that I thought would work, is working. It's fine. It's totally fine. I mean, I got here, you know. But I understood that when I was doing that, I was cutting myself off from kids, for example, from people who didn't want to be around alcohol, from a lot of people. At the same time, I'm making a physical space in a city, so I'm cutting myself off from people who don't live in that city or have access to the physical space. And that's okay. Like, it's totally fine. The game you make does not have to be for everyone. I've had friends who've made really powerful games that they haven't let anyone else play. Making a game, you know, you really choose the metrics of success. That one. You choose the metric of success when you set out, and you should have that in mind the whole time, basically. Otherwise, you're going to be unhappy. And it's fine to make spaces that don't accommodate as many people. Like, it shouldn't be for reasons like, you know, the reason of not accommodating someone should be in your control, and it should be communicated. There's a whole sort of grey area going on right now that I'm not really going to touch, but you can ask me about it later. But basically, it's just sort of, don't try to reach everyone. It's not for everyone. Make games for you first, and for the space and the people you want to make games for. Oh yeah, so this is the preachy bit. The whole thing's preachy, really. This is why I'm behind this. So after I ran Delete at GDC as an event, as a party. Figured out it wasn't really the right space for it. It was a really good party. I was there till, well, actually that was after close, doesn't matter. But I figured that GDC is a really interesting space, and it's also inaccessible, and it's expensive, and it's weird. So why not I didn't have to make it expensive, but it's a GDC, so I needed to get some money out of it. But yeah, I made it inaccessible, kind of, you know, arbitrary space at GDC. I would do it again, but in a different way. Either way, the whole thing was an experiment. It was great. And afterwards, I created this little 5-page sort of DIY manifesto-y thing, which is freely available, you know, share it around, it's a PDF. And it's really just about the things I went through considering this kind of space. And it's, you know, worth a read if you're not asleep by now. Because I've got this squid in my gut that's I could really go a post-lunch nap. But really, everything's just about it's about simplicity. People look at events and they go, I could never organize an event. I mean, I couldn't organize this. I don't have to. Cheers. But you know, it starts off with just some friends who are keen. The idea is to start with the end result of some friends who go, let's hang out at my place and play some games, so let's make some games to play there. Or it might be we've got some friends coming into the office on a Friday afternoon, let's have a little bit of a jam on Wednesday night to make some games to play there. Starting with the end result of, let's make a little space, we've got some friends or some people who want to come and see this space, so what can we make that'd be perfect for that space? And as small and simple as you can, start off with just one game, doesn't matter. As long as you keep it chill, you know, you'll be fine. And as a kind of example of this is, you should all come to the thing at Sunday. Similar kind of thing, coming to Wellington, and I really wanted to go see Garage Project. So asked them if they wanted to make some games. And they were happy to throw some money down to commission some games that'll be at a bar on Sunday if you want to come play this thing. And you know, it's a really simple way. It didn't cost a lot. It was very chill. The bar's just going to be there. most bars are cool with you using the space if you bring people in, by the way, like mine is. So it's just a very I'll be happy to talk to anyone who's curious about this kind of stuff, because everyone's got different specific, sort of needs, wants, and abilities. So if I can help any kind of connections, that kind of thing, I just want to see this kind of stuff grow. Also, if you know anyone with money who wants to commission video games, hey. So yeah, so this is kind of my weird perspective on video games at the moment, and it's the thing that kind of drives me and keeps me going. So I hope that it's kind of a little inspiring. If not, I hope that it got me to Wellington, because I haven't been here before and it's lovely. So yeah, thank you.